Hello out there, and welcome to the video for our strength training recap that we did at the yoga studio. So this is our warm-up yoga sequence that you can modify and take your time with and really go slowly with, as slowly as you want to, and do as many times as you want to, and add and subtract things that feel right for you. So here's a template for you to work from. Starting at the top of your mat, feet a comfortable distance apart. Tadasana, mountain pose. Let your arms just hang. Feel your feet on the floor. Next time you take a breath in, those arms float up overhead. And as you exhale, sit into a chair pose. Hips draw back, toes are light, heavy in the heels. Reach the fingertips out of the armpits, lengthening the sides of your arms. Draw the butt back to the edge of the chair. Draw the belly up and in. Get settled in your chair. Imagine drawing your cummerbund up and back to the spine, and draw those inner thighs in toward one another, activating the inner lines of the legs. A couple more breaths, warming up, getting your heart pumping and legs warm. One more breath in your chair, inhaling. As you exhale, bend even deeper, ribs and thighs touch, half chair, Ardha Utkatasana. Reach the fingertips forward and reach the sits bones back away from the fingertips. Firing up, activating the whole of the body. Arms, trunk, legs, heavy in the heels. Reaching forward through the crown, back through the tail. One more breath, in and out. As you exhale, come into a deep squat. It might be elbows on the knees and you just pulse in, lifting the heels. If you can come as deeply as I'm suggesting, you're going to have feet together, knees open wide outside of the arms. Continue to drop sits bones and heels down as you reach forward through the fingertips. The head can drop if that feels okay. Breathing here. These get easier each time you come through them. Great. Next time you breathe in and out, fully exhale and drop to your butt and rock and roll a few times. So rocking on the spine, holding onto the backs of the legs. You might do little ones at first. Pick up some momentum using those lower legs. Eventually, propelling yourself all the way up to your feet. You might cross your ankles, makes it a little easier. Use your hands. Once you come up there, inhale, reach those fingertips high. Exhale, chair pose. So you might do that sequence again 2-3 times. We're going to move on for video's sake. This time moving into a lunge. Right foot lifts, comes back behind you, standing crescent lunge. And of course, this first one you might take your time with and find some nice long side body stretch. And as you come through these postures, as you get more warm, you might just get to a tempo of about one breath, one movement. So from this nice big lunge, we're going to twist. Right arm's going to come forward, left arm's going to come back. Big open arm twist, reaching across the fingertips. One more breath in and out. Inhaling up through crescent lunge, arms raise overhead. And then you're going to step forward and balance on left leg. Right knee comes up and through. And then take left arm forward, right arm back. Twisting here in your standing balance. It should be wobbly the first time. We haven't been here yet. Focusing the mind, getting the breath to calm and still. And we're making a big movement down to dragonfly twist. Right toes and right hand are going to come down, and the left arm's going to open up. Ready? Big windmill. All the way down. Open that left arm to the sky. Take a big breath in. Exhale, the left hand comes down, step back to plank. Inhale in your plank position. Exhale to your downward dog. You can stay here as long as you like. Resting, breathing. When you're ready to move on, we're going to just take this right foot way to the outside of our right hand. Big lunge. And you can bend and straighten the back knee and kind of sink in. You could stay right here, just being in this big deep lunge, opening up the hips. If you want to get a little belly work, you might start to position yourself for this rounded cat back, knee toward chest, left knee toward the chest. If you're feeling good there, you might want to play with this kick through. You could bring your blocks to the mat, give yourself a little lift off. It helps to have some height. And you'll kick the left foot through, freeing up the right hand. Left foot kicks through as if you're kicking that right hand away. As you get more advanced, you might ditch your blocks or lower them. Eventually from this deep lunge, you'll be able to just kick through, back. Do that a couple times, stepping to your plank and then to your dog. Inhale, the right leg can float up. Exhale, right foot forward. Inhale, left foot forward. Exhale, fold. Inhale, reach and rise up. Exhale, hands through your heart. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, chair. Inhale, chair. Exhale, half chair. Once again, moving at the pace that suits you. Inhale here. Exhale, squat. You can hang out longer if you like. Exhale, drop down, rock and roll. Come all the way up to your feet. Inhale up to the feet. Exhale, chair pose. Inhale, step the left foot back. Exhale, settle to your crescent. Inhale here, find that length. Maybe some stretching here, left arm reaches up, right hip drops down. Inhaling up. Exhale to your twist, left arm forward, right arm back. And again, these first few, slower, hanging out, find your breath in them, and really prepare to come forward to balance. That left knee is going to come forward and through, right arm forward, left arm back. And then preparing to come all the way down, dragonfly twist. Left toes, left hand to the floor. Right arm opens up, inhaling. Exhale, right hand to the floor, step back, plank. Inhale, plank. Exhale, dog. Great. Big wide step lunge. Inhale, the left leg floats. Exhale, left foot way to the outside of left hand. And again, playing with your lunge, holding here and opening up the hips, feeling that contact in the hands, back, nice strong shoulders. You could do some knee toward chest, right knee toward chest. Really cave in the front body, opening up back body. Maybe you practice kicking through, on or off the blocks, as many times as is fun for you. And then find your way back to plank and then to dog. Left foot, inhale. Exhale, step it forward. Inhale, right foot forward. Exhale, fold. Inhale, reach and rise up. Exhale, hands through your heart. Last time through rock and roll. Inhale. Exhale, chair. Inhale, chair. Exhale, half chair. Inhale, half chair. Exhale, squat. Inhale, exhale, squat. Exhale, sitting back, rock and roll. All the way up to your feet. Inhaling. And exhale those hands down. And so you can repeat that sequence as many times as you wish. Hope that was fun. Let's do some strength training moves now. Okay, so here's our next scene of movements that sort of work in some of that yoga asana into some strength training type of movements. So when you're at home, I know many of you don't have equipment, so we're going to do this bare bones. I'm just going to assume most of us have some sort of surface, maybe a book, like a big cookbook, or yoga props that you might have, but I'm going to always suggest that when you're working with strength training moves, start with just your body weight and then kind of progress into adding additional weight, hand weights or the like. So we're going to start with all the different variations of lunging that you might practice at home. So we'll begin with holding an object in your hands. It could be anything that's comfortable to hold. And you're going to find a static lunge with a twist. So stepping your right foot forward, bending both knees as you lower and twist. So both knees bend as you lower and twist. And you're twisting toward that front leg. Twisting in the direction of front leg, just like we did in that yoga move, in our warm-up yoga asana, twisting. Okay, so a couple things to keep in mind. The weight is in your front heel, not in the toes. As you bend this front knee, it should stack about over the ankle, kneecap tracking over middle toes. We don't want to come forward of the ankle because it'll put too much strain on the joints. As you rotate, I'm not finding a big crank. I'm not trying to look behind me. That throws my pelvis off. I'm just trying to rotate in the chest space. So from this lunge, my rotation is pretty small. It's just a thoracic rotation. You'll do 8 to 15 of these, depending on how strong you feel that day. 8 to 15 repetitions. And then you can switch sides. The other foot comes forward, bending and turning. As you come up, everything comes up. As you come down, you turn, come up, we come up. So those legs straighten as you come up, they bend as you come down. Getting a little stretch and some strength work. That's the first lunge variation. The second thing you might do to get a little bit more advanced is to do it with a walk. So rather than being stationary, you might step, bend, turn. Switch feet, step, bend, turn. Switch feet. So you're walking through the room, lunging with a little bit of a rotation. So that's the second option you might take on. The third option might be a little bit more advanced. Arms start overhead and we imagine we're kayaking. So we're going to row our kayak twist to the direction of the front leg. let it swing back, bring it forward. Let it swing back and bring it forward. So we're getting a sense of twist, leveraging some momentum. And the most important thing when you're doing a walking lunge, a moving forward, is the control up and down. It's not so important how fast you go, as long as the movement feels in control as you lower and lift. Nothing is trying to go too fast and wobbling out of place. We're keeping ourselves integrated. And then the final lunge thing you might do is having a small amount of weight in one of your hands. Just let it hang. Imagine you're holding one bag of groceries and you're walking into your house. So we're practicing that offset weight on one side as we walk and lunge. So those are lots of ways, and on your way back you might switch to hands, walk and lunge. These are ways we can challenge ourselves. And lunges are just really healthy for most bodies. If you have chronic knee issues, arthritis, just do fewer of them, but they are still good for most bodies. Consult your PT or your physician. I'm not promising all things, but mostly they're very good to keep ourselves strong and flexible. Okay, so that's it for the lunging options. Let's move into some squatting options. Okay, welcome back. We're here for our squatting section. For squat options, there's lots you can do, but I'm going to give you some of that we did in our practice. We did those pivot squats. So if you're at home and you don't have fancy equipment, you might just use what they call, well, they're gliders, but you might just use a towel on a slippery surface or some slippery socks. I'm going to show you kind of a stuttered version outside on my yoga mat, but this is the basics of it. If you have an object, you don't need one, but if you do have an object, you'd hold it just in front of your chest. Toes turn out slightly, and you're dropping into your squat, weight down in the heels, toes light. As you come up, you're gonna pivot around forward, landing down in your squat again, and as you come back, you're coming back where you came from, pivoting back. So as you see, I can't glide as well, but if you had a towel or slippery sock under the standing leg, as you come around, you can get a little bit of momentum gliding in these pivots, forward and back. And then you'd switch sides, pivoting on opposite foot. As you become a little bit more adept and more advanced and you've got some cardiovascular capacity with this, it's very cardio intensive, you might add some arms. As you come up, arms come up. As you come up, arms come up. Same pattern if you want to do a swing movement. As you come forward, we swing. Swing to come back. So you can play with different variations on this pivot squat, but it's good for the brain, good for our balance, good for core control. And just like with lunges, you want to control the movement in both directions. So you're not flailing wildly, losing control. It's methodical and slow, like your yoga asana practice. Okay, another squat movement you might do is a lateral squat. So it's similar to what we were doing, except you start with feet together and you would step out, maybe do a swing and come together. Any kind of lateral movement. You can make these more advanced if you had your foot elevated slightly to give you a little bit more crease in the hip, a little bit more challenge, more depth in the leg that's on the lift. And you can always just add weight. You might add a different arm movement. And then sort of akin to a squat is kind of a step-up movement. And so one of the step-up movements you might do on any amount of lift, I would suggest like a step or 2 steps. If that feels a little precarious, I'm going to demonstrate from the knees. So you'll start on your knees. If you could hold an object, you could have hands on your hips. And what you'll do is you'll just step forward. And as you come up, arms can come up or stay on your hips. Come back down. Do the same leg repetitively, getting a sense of control as you lift and lower the body. So a more advanced might be holding an object in the chest or maybe pressing it overhead. So you can imagine if you have a step, imagine this is a big step, you could have it any height, but you're stepping up and lifting up, getting a sense of power from these glutes and control lifting and lowering your body. So those are ways to get the glutes. And then let's see here. I think that's it for our squat movements. There's so much we could talk about with squats, but the key thing to keep in mind is weight back into the heels. Chest mostly stays lifted. I see a lot of chest coming forward. So let's see if we can stay upright and really drop back. And if you can't go as low, don't go as low. But keep that spine from folding forward. It just puts a lot of load on the lower back. We just don't want to tax it in that way. Okay, so that's it for those movements. We'll move on to some upper body stuff. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate some movements, and we did some stuff in the studio that uses equipment that you may or may not have at home. So we did what we call kind of a squat and row. And the squat and row, we used a resistance band. And so I'm just going to show you the mechanics of it, and you can sort of picture me holding onto those handles looped around the post, and I've got this nice resistance on. And so as I come down into my squat, again, weight back into the heels, we're going to find a nice lift and kind of a thrust forward in the trunk and pelvis and a drawing back of the elbows. And there has to be enough resistance as I come out with those arms that I'm getting a little bit of pull forward so that I'm forced to pull back in my hips and my heels. So if it's too slack, I'm not getting that sense of tug, so I can just kind of fake it. But if I have a pull forward, a little bit of pull, then I pull back against it and I can get a little bit more stability here. Then as I come up, I have a good amount of resistance to really use those big strong back muscles to draw my elbows back, fists in toward the lower ribs. So this is a squat and row movement. You can get sophisticated and do it one-legged. You don't come very deep, right? So a little bit of upper body. You can always access really good upper body movement doing push-ups, lots of different ways to do push-ups. I would like to suggest a couple. It's kind of nice to have a little bit of lift under the hands for push-up down dog movements. So from your push-up here, you might come forward toward the toes, find a little elbow bend, and then press to your dog. And it's a nice way to get a nice full range of motion so you don't kind of stunt the muscle and shorten it. You're getting a nice contraction and then a nice release and extension through these two movements. So like your yoga, but a little bit of strength work, core plank. And then if you want to get a little bit of chest, extra chest stuff, keep one hand on a block, one hand on the floor. Hands are standing a little wider in this one because we're going to get a little bit more of our chest involved. With our hands more narrow, it's a little bit more heavy in the triceps and shoulders. Here we can get our big pec muscles involved. If we widen them out, we get our back muscles too. So from your upward push-up, keeping one hand elevated, you could be knees lifted or knees on the floor. And just like the principle when we had one foot up on an elevated surface doing a squat, you just get a little bit more deep into one side, and this side gets a little bit different range of motion. And so it just offsets things, and I found it to be helpful to build a little bit more capacity in the front chest area. So just one hand on an elevated surface. And then, let's see here. That's a good sequence of upper body for there. We're gonna move along and I'll show you some other things you might do. So, okay, welcome back. We're here down on the mat to do our abdominal routine. So there's a few kind of go-tos that will always get you and are always safe. They won't overtax, and they're difficult to use, or they're difficult to recruit other muscles. So you're really asked to call on the proper abdominal muscles you're trying to use. So lying on the back, here, I'll face this way. Lying on the back, feet on the floor, elbows open wide, fingertips interlaced behind the head. Press the backs of the elbows into the floor, really arch the back. Lift the top of the chest up to the chin, arch, arch, arch. Create this big rainbow in your spine. And then as you exhale, tuck the tail under, tuck the chin in, round forward, press the spine and curl the tail up and in, really curl the spine. So this type of a sit-up, where you get full extension and full flexion of the spine, calls on all of the abdominals to kind of gather and work, and it doesn't shorten the muscle. So these muscles get really short because we sit a lot, these front muscles, but by giving it a little bit of this big stretch across the front, we're allowing the muscle to stretch a little bit and then tone. So curling and extending, and you could make these more advanced by just taking the feet up to the ceiling and curling and extending, find that big arch, and then round in. So that's one thing you might do. Another thing you might do is have the knees up above the hips, arms up to the sky, and you can just hold here, finding neutral spine so there's not a flat low back, it's not a big arch, it's right in the middle. And then you can hold the limbs here. You might do opposite leg, opposite arm. As you'll see, I don't go very far off center because if I do, I start to wobble in my pelvis and I lose track of my deep belly cummerbund. So we're trying to work this area down below the belly button in between our hip bones. That's going to be the place that's going to be working mostly. So we've got these dead bugs. You can press your fingertips into the thighs, draw the thighs back into the fingertips, find this static hold, breathing there. The effort is about 20%, so you can sustain it and breathe, but there's constant tension in that deep belly space. Yeah, and then rest. And then coming up to do a little bit of side trunk work. So on your forearm, palm down, elbow underneath the shoulder, you might take the knees to the floor, hand on the hip, and do some hip dips, or you could do them with the legs extended, sides of the feet to the floor, lifting and lowering. Yeah, and you switch sides. And you could do like as many of these as you can till you're absolutely exhausted. Yeah, and then always a reminder to work in some rolling and some stretching amongst all of this. So even as you're doing some of these movements, you might incorporate a stretch at the wall or a down dog or something just to keep your body opening as it's contracting in the muscles. Yeah. Okay, so that's the end of some ab suggestions. There's always so much more, and you know how to get in touch with me if you want to know more info, but for today's video, that's going to be it. Okay, so for another piece to consider in your body, lateral movement in the legs is really good because we do a lot of forward and backward movement. So here's some lateral movements that might be kind of nice. I mean, just really some basic stuff. You might just hop side to side, little hops. You might, you know, find an object to hop over to give you a goal. You know, it's like, okay, so that I'm not just cheating, or I can kind of measure in some way. Yeah, and then as you get a little bit more excited, you might find an object that's sturdy enough for your weight, and you might hop and do a little hop switch. So what this is doing is it's putting a little bit of gentle outward stress as you land and catch yourself, a little bit of power as you come up and over, and then it's giving your inner thighs a chance to fire and find that sense of drawing inward. So mostly what you're doing is you're controlling the outward spill by gathering everything up and in. So everything's kind of gathering up and in rather than spilling out and losing control. So you're getting a sense of that drawing in and drawing in and drawing in to keep yourself integrated towards center. And so another lateral movement that always feels really good is what I call speed skaters, and I know many of you have done these. So you can start with feet together, step wide, bend that outside knee, and swing up and back. Bend the outside knee, touch those toes, swing up and back. This one takes a little bit to get in the brain. Once you get it dialed, once you get it dialed, you might add a little balance. Knee can come up. This just gives you a little bit more stuff to work with. Okay, there's that. And then in conjunction, this is a little bit different of a movement, similar, but again with those towels or those slippery surface tools, socks or towels, you might find this gliding movement. So this time the standing leg is bent. So in speed skaters, standing leg stays straight. And these ones, standing leg bends and this one comes out. So you're in a little opposite. So really got to pay attention. Sliding out, sliding back, sliding out, sliding back, switching, sliding out, sliding back, sliding back, sliding out, and then you might do a little dance. So my feet, imagine, on a slippery surface are gliding side to side. So there's a little pull back in, a little push out, a little pull in, a push out. So you're sweeping side to side, always controlled. So go as fast or as slow as you need to. All of these movements, there's no right or wrong amount. I usually do them 3 times through, anywhere between 8 and 15 repetitions. That's just sort of my general rule. So follow what feels good in your body. So that's some good lateral stuff. One that we didn't do in class that's really good for side body and getting this kind of internal seam, hands behind the head horse pose, where you can do some side dips, keeping the chest lifted. And it kind of feels good to stretch over there, and it feels good to kind of compress as you come down. So these are good for those obliques and getting some lateral movement in the trunk. Yeah. And that gets those legs nice and hot. So Oh, and then the final I forgot to mention is just any of these balance things you want to do as long as you want to do them. Being on a sticky mat gives you a little bit of that squishy feeling, but we have those big blue balance pads. I mean, anything that feels a little bit more unstable than the floor will be helpful, like a yoga mat. So you can practice just standing on one leg, maybe holding an object and doing a pendulum. So that knee comes up and the foot comes back. Yeah, and you can just do these as many as you can handle, as many as you want. And then you can start playing with different variations in the hip. So you could do this dodo bird, but then you might practice dodo bird kicking the leg and then opening the hip. So you kind of turn to the side and feel what that does for your standing leg, and play with different variations in the pelvis and balancing. So you can really kind of get creative. Open arms, open, and just, you know, play with balance. It's a lot easier that way. It's not so stressful. So that's that. Thank you so much for being on this journey with this 4 weeks. I'm so appreciative of you all showing up at Friday mornings at 7 a.m. and I'll see you for the next one. Namaste.